Well, hello everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good wherever, everything, wherever you are in the beautiful world. Again, welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa. And it's wonderful Wednesday with our beautiful Jessie again.
Hello,
Hello, Monet.
hello.
Hello, Jessie. How you doing, Jess?
Good. We should have named this episode the spicy shake and bake it episode or something.
Shake
I've
and
got
bake
that
because I think
feeling, this is really about the kingdom talk, that we're talking about, and that's about shaking and moving mountains. So,
exactly. And I'm looking forward to that. But there's a couple of things, and again, we always have so many interesting things that we want to talk about. But of course, we have to streamline our chats. So I have a propensity to be all over the place. Sometimes I get so excited, and there's like a million things appearing in front of my eyes at the same time. So I'm going to try and be good. But you know what? The first thing I really want to address is that we understand these are crazy times, and honestly, I see the Twitter wars going crazy. I now, for the first time in my life, understand Twitter wars. I was never on Twitter before, but it's very interesting what's going on. And I don't know, there just seems to be a lot of nonsense being spoken out there right now, Jess. I don't know, what do you have to say about some of the accusations that are being thrown your way as well? I mean, things are heating up, right? Things are really heating up
yeah,
here,
they
battlefield.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I'm somebody that I'm not in it at this moment to, you know, I'll say, I try to be very direct. So, what I do with those tweets, I'm not going to respond to every single one, but I did respond to a very specific one that Madison put out. And what I was addressing were the lies that she put out, stuff about me. And I directly put the thing that she put out in that tweet. And, it's just to put that kind of stuff or to assume. And I think that's the problem, is that people are assuming things that are not true. And we need to stop that. That's not, of the Lord. Scripture says that he knows the thoughts that he has for us, thoughts that are for good and, so that we can have a future and a hope. They're in Jeremiah 29:11. So, you know, as believers, that's what we're to be thinking about towards one another, is things that bring that future and that hope, and preparing for the good works that God's given each of us to do. So that's really where my heart is, and I did a show on that a few weeks back, um, called The Thoughts That I Have for You on Kingdom Living with Jessie.com. And so I reposted that. I encourage everybody to go and watch that, because we talk about that um, cycle of entertaining thoughts. And what really happens is that, you know, there's people out there who have bad intentions towards us. Those people begin to speak out lies, falsehoods, false accusations, things that are outright not truth. And as we entertain those thoughts and continue to entertain them, it causes a reaction and an emotional response. And then we begin to attack or feel threatened or um, say bad things, because we're believing the assumptions about what that other person is thinking about us. So, how do we stop that cycle? We need to stop entertaining those thoughts. Um, don't assume that you know what somebody else thinks or believes about you. And why I corrected that is because, one, those things are not true about me. And if those are the thoughts she continues to entertain about me, well, she can do that, I guess. But, it's sad that she can't see the truth that, I have never said a bad thing to her or about her. And, I did address the one thing that happened between us with the tweet. I had posted it. because I post a lot of Timothy Charles Homseth stuff. And then I went back and I explained to her that I thought it was being taken a different way. I went back and removed it, and I called her immediately to apologize for that. And since then, I have not, reposted anything with her in there. So, yep. So we'll
I
leave
think,
it there.
yeah, I think, and again, I always say to people at times like this, just practice discernment. Again, I can't tell you in the last month or so how many people have emailed me or sent messages or whatever and accusing me of ushering in the Antichrist. I mean, people, I'm a farm girl from the Karoo, okay, from the arse end of Africa. I never in my life even knew the Antichrist existed except in movies until 2 years ago. I'm telling you, okay. So my point is that there's so much that accusations are made, and I'm this and I'm that. What I'd just like to say, anyone who has watched our channel from the beginning, we have maintained who we are. We have maintained our integrity on this channel. We have stood. You are the person that started our channel with us. We started our channel because of you. And I want to say that if I thought in any way you were crooked or dodgy, I would not continue, because that would be out of my integrity. And that for me is very important. We have not changed our stance. We have loved Jessie. We've supported her from the beginning. And yes, we've had lots of things come our way and lots of accusations. And I've had to go into my own prayer and meditation and talk to God and speak to Jess, and we've worked through whatever bumps we might have had. So I want to just say we have not changed the way that we feel on this channel. Other people may have been divided or split because of whatever these wars are going on here. And then suddenly when I'm not, or when this channel, or let me rather say this channel, is not following that narrative because they've now started believing something else, then we get lambasted and accused of all sorts of things. First they love bomb us, then they hurl us with acid, then they acid bomb us. So it's all I'm saying is I'm just pointing that out. I see this, I notice this happening. I'm not going to change my opinion on where we are at. Rest assured about that. No matter how many of you tell me I've got a fake channel and I'm doing this and whatever, if that's what you think, adios, amigos, really,
That's
bye.
what, the harassers, the operatives, really there's much more behind it than the average person can understand. Some of the lies that are being assumed is that we assume that everybody who's on Twitter is just an average person like we are. And that is not true. Some of these people are outright paid operatives. Their purpose is to follow the narrative and to make sure that everybody else is aligning with the approved narrative. We've talked about the dark side of the system. We've talked about the light side. As things are coming forward about that light side of the system, they don't want you to know how the light side works. They don't want you to know that some of these light side of the system members are evil. And it doesn't mean necessarily that they've done crimes personally themselves. They have ways around that. But what constitutes that evil, the majority of it is that they cover up the things that are truly happening. And, they don't want you to know that they knew and they covered it up, especially in regards to, the child trafficking and exploitation. And a great example of this, okay, let's look at one of those assumptions and things that's going around. There have been people outright pushing that, Elon is the Antichrist or he's ushering in the Antichrist. And why do they push that narrative? Why? You have to ask, why do they push it? because they know that Elon
Ah,
has
ah,
went through abuse as a child through not
yes,
only the US military, but who is the main group? It's the Luciferian Brotherhood.
yeah,
So as a bloodline hierarchy child growing up in that system, what were things that he witnessed and he went through? I've named some of those things in my affidavit that all these hierarchy children, what did we witness? We witnessed sexual exploitation. We witnessed the movement of children. We witnessed satanic ritual. We witnessed crimes of murder and horrific cannibalism. We witnessed torture as like you can't believe. And we witnessed it coming from government officials as well as high level people who were running our communities, people like firemen, police officers, teachers, doctors, lawyers. These were the circle of friends of our family members. So we witnessed these people engaged in these crimes. And the last thing they want is more than one witness coming forward against all these individuals and these things. But we've already proven, I've spent 3 years, this show has been vital in that fight of giving my testimony that, I've already shown how this system works, who's involved with it, how it's operating and functioning, and the witnesses have been coming forward. So many people who've started to share their stories and say, "You're right. I experienced similar things. Here's my part of the story." We've been putting all the pieces together on this show and all the other platforms. I encourage people go back, start at the beginning, listen to the other survivors' testimonies, and listen for what are the similarities. Really it shows the methods, the means of operation of this Luciferian Brotherhood. And that's what they don't want Elon coming out with. So they will come up with any lie they can get people to believe, particularly that he's the Antichrist or raising up the Antichrist. Why? Because it causes a lot of fear. Because we're in that time where people are looking, they're expecting that individual to come forward. But the thing is, go back, listen to our shows. We've given every single detail of what to expect, like what to look for, you know? And those are the things that we need to be watching out for. We know the truth. We know who's going to be bringing it in. Now, if he suddenly starts popping up everywhere with the Sanhedrin, well, yeah, then certainly we need to keep our eye out for that. But right now, what is he really engaged with that he's doing? He's trying to come forward with sharing truths about things that have been going on behind the scenes. And if we're so invested in the narrative and the slamming, the damning, the condemning, we're not hearing the truth of what's being said. And
absolutely.
all of us are in this because we want to see the evil done to children stop. So that means
That's
that we have to pause. We need to listen. We need to hear what's being said and done. And we need to come alongside of those. Things are in the courts right now. We've talked about the court case in Minnesota where everything's sealed, documents are sealed there. We talked about, how Trump has two RICO cases, or I'll say one is a RICO case against the Clinton Foundation. Then he also has another case there, um, that he's going against. And so those are in the Florida courts. The tribunal case was out of that's filed in those Florida courts. I've given those numbers so you can request those things. Um, then we have the Tennessee case, Homeseth versus Page. And, that's a RICO case as well. So all of the testimonies are in those areas. And, what have these people done? First, you know, they attempted to, destroy, to prevent those affidavits of multiple witnesses going forward. Literally, they unlawfully, get this, it is unlawful, it's against the law for anybody to break notary and affidavit seals. They broke the seals in the Minnesota court. What did they do then? They took copies of those affidavits. They began to release information publicly. Droll Law Firm out of Texas was the first. Their lawyer began to release some of that publicly. And, then it was taken from there, where it was made public on several YouTube channels. And with what? With the attempt to discredit. But then they took it further. They totally denied due process to those that the information they made public, and they began to literally go through affidavits, calling perpetrators of crimes against children. They called them to notify them, are you aware that Jessie Marie Czebotar has named you in a case involving satanic ritual? I'm saying it live right here today. Yes, there are individuals in our government I have named, not only who have been involved in satanic ritual, but cannibalism. So where's my due process in that? They denied me that, calling those people. What does that do? We're talking about the brotherhood system. It automatically gives those individuals, instead of being pulled into court and having their chance to prove, yes, I'm guilty of this, or no, I'm not, that's the due process. Instead of that, what does it do? It gives them the chance now to put out hits on me, to put out hits on my family, to put out hits on my friends, to attack my show hosts that I work with, to, blackball my career, to do things that drain all my money sources so I can't fight them in court. This is the game that they play. Then they call the victims. Is that fair to victims that I've named, for them to not even hear through the courts that, hey, did this happen? Do you want to come and testify about your part? No, because now guess what? Everybody knows their name and they're on a hit list too. So this is how they do these crimes. And we need to stand up, because you know what? Just as a victim, we need to not be allowing this crap to happen to people like Elon, who are coming forward. I applaud those who are being courageous enough. So many people on your show, Chantel, it takes courage, it takes grit, it takes fortitude to bring forward your testimony in some of these areas. And we put our lives on the line to do it.
I absolutely agree with you on that. And I want to just say as well that after last week's show that we did on solutions with the importance of your testimonies, I've had several people reaching out who I'm going to be chatting with. Already am chatting to some of them. And again, just having more viewers speak about their stories. And if the more of you guys who have who'd like to share your story, honestly, it's a beautiful community. Everyone is very supportive. We are praying that more and more people will do this, because as we were saying last time, it's like little wildflowers starting to grow, right? And the more it is, the more they sprout, the less these guys can contain and control. It's like a dam wall starting to break and you're trying to stop it with buckets. You can't, So at the end of the day, this is so important. And I love that people are standing up and speaking. And, I say this so often on our shows, and I wish people can understand this. right in the beginning, you told us you could only tell us things in increments because you were doing a lot of the affidavits and
Yeah.
in courts and stuff like that. I've always known that. We've always said that. And yet when I see a lot of the stuff that the harassers are talking about, it's like, well, this and that, and I'm like, what have you not heard? It's like it's all put out there, you
But we
know?
can make it simple for them. It's actually very simple. You know, they have all these things that they're spouting out there. But the simple part is that things are being dealt with lawfully.
Yeah,
And from the beginning, we've been lawful about it. So they can, know that 100%, that things will be fair and lawful. It doesn't mean it's going to turn out like they want it to turn out. Um, but they'll get their turn. Their turn's coming. And
yeah,
thank God it will be a lawful turn, their time around. So
absolutely.
we'll see where that goes. But yeah,
Indeed.
I mean, it was important. Part of that having to do the increments is because this is a complicated system that we're against. We're not just talking, one organization, one corporation, one department, or certain individuals in that. Literally, this is an entire system that has infiltrated every part of society, every part of government. And to be able, there's things that you have to do to secure safety of some. Um, so throughout the entire process, there's not things you can just outright do. In order to take down the dark side, you have to have people who are on the light side with you.
Yeah,
It's a concerted effort. There's no other way around it. Nobody was able, how do you, I mean, think about that. Our military is trained in spiritual warfare, but what side do they usually serve on? They work with demonic generals. So, would they have taken down the full dark side? No. So you have to have people invested in the long-term goals, which is, above all things, making sure that this evil does not continue, um, or that people don't continue to commit crimes against children. So the dark side had to come down first. Um, but then, did we stop there? No. You know, there were seasons. So, we've just gone through that season now where people on the light side are being named. Those who have covered up crimes against children have been named. They're being pulled into different, or we'll just say, investigations have been happening. So that's the due process. Um,
absolutely.
and if we believe in that, we need to enforce it. We have to institute it. We have to allow things to take time, which is hard because, for the majority of us survivors, it wasn't like we just lived through, one traumatic event. Our entire life, years, um, of traumatic event is what happened. And, we want justice. We want things to happen quickly. Um, but we've had to just sit back and wait. And it's hard because as you're waiting, it's not just like you're sitting there waiting and, everything's okay. It's not. It's a
Yeah,
fight. It's like you're on the front lines and to have to be on the front lines for years. Um,
absolutely.
that that's a hard place to be.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
And tiring. Yeah. Well, I'm just loving where things are going right now. I'm very happy that Elon is on Twitter and he's giving us free speech and he's taken down child and kiddie porn and all these woke celebs are leaving, like Alyssa Milano, who's given back her Tesla. and now has bought a VW because she just loves it without realizing, hello, wait for it. Who started VW in the 30s? Wasn't it Hitler?
Yeah, I mean,
come on, people.
you know, we'll go with that. And you know, we've talked about the symbology. You know, do you think it's by accident that it's called V, you know, people shorten it to VW, and again we got symbols. You know, but what do you have? You have the V, which is the female chalice, and then when you have the W, you know, it's the bottom part of sex, the sex symbol. You know, if you've got the
Wow.
upper chevron M, and people can look at, you know, I bring out Colonel Michael Aquino's work all the time, but look at the cover of his book, Mind Wars, and you will see that embedded sex symbol on the cover. It's the M with the W underneath it. We're talking sex magic, you know? And I mean, let's say it out loud. Was Hitler engaged in sex magic? Absolutely. Why do you think he liked Richard Wagner's work of the Valkyries so much? Because it's a song that's about sex magic. So, you know, people aren't going to bring that out. They want you to think about Valkyries and war, but I'm telling you now, it's a song about sex magic, and it's used for that in rituals. That's why Hitler liked it.
I
But
would really
anyway,
rather. Please, can
I
you
guess we
just
can't
refrain?
assume Hitler's thoughts. I gotta put that out there quick.
Please, can you just refrain from speaking about Hitler in a sexual context? I can't quite cope. I've got a visual mind, okay? I don't want about
You gotta
thinking
get
about
that
Hitler.
out of there, Chantel. Just take it as it is, you know. But yeah, we can't assume if you liked it or not, you know. So I guess that's wrong. I gotta take to what I'm preaching. But anyway, my guess is, my high opinion is that he liked that song because he was engaging in sex magic. But anyway,
Oh my God, that is so funny.
all the
Uh,
athletes do. We'll put, not all, I guess, but I would say a high amount of them. Probably there's a high chance they engage in sex magic. But can we
no,
prove that? Absolutely, we can. But anyway.
I'm pretty sure about that. Okay, so now Elon, that we can maybe think about Elon not as the Antichrist or the one that's ushering in the Antichrist. Maybe he's doing a lot of good, and maybe there's something that's turning. I, for one, am very happy because all of you know on this channel, I've got a crush on secret crush. Actually, not so secret crush anymore, obviously, right?
Yeah,
But
you're making it public right now.
totally.
We won't give you too hard of a time.
I'm Team Elon, that's for sure. So, now that we've got that out the way, we were going to talk last week about the white rabbit, right? And the symbolism in all of that. And again, I know you can obviously, with whatever you can tell us about that, I would love to know about Chantal Tesla. I love it. Someone just said Chantal Tesla. That sounds great. Anyway. I already have an electric wheel. You know, there's the uni wheels. We call it the poor man's Tesla.
Oh, yeah,
So
you've talked about that.
yeah, it's the poor man's Tesla. I love it. It's very cute. Okay. So the white rabbit, the symbolism, tell us about that. I know you've also done some recent Twitter drops on that, which kind of got, I know, both Morna and myself very intrigued. So.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we know, like, you know, we've talked some of my story in childhood about the military connections and, you know, the programs that I was involved in through the military, which primarily were, you know, it starts with the looking glass, which is where, you know, they begin to use children connecting to the spirit world with the purpose of using gifts, or we could say visions, premonitions, in order to figure out what the future is, and then from that knowledge, then they try to control the narrative of the future. There was a time limit on that. No one has been able to see past 2024. So, we know that there's a major shift, that there's no more playing with the timeline past that date, or that year. So, then the second project was the Star Wars Now project, which I just posted today on my Twitter again. The links to that, and some other things. So there's a little goodie there connected to that. But, with that project, they begin to introduce us to the spiritual gates and operating the spiritual gates. That's directly connected with different government organizations like CERN, HARP, DARPA. And, with CERN has what we call, a big hydro collider. What is that collider used for? With the spiritual gates, they operate off of sound, frequency, light. And, how was it done in the old days? We had to learn to harmonize, to sing together. We had to learn the gate songs audibly. We had to be able to hear those and then be able to harmonize in order to, open or close those spiritual gates. But, they found that there were ways that they could manage that frequency. And what it does, it's not just so much about opening one gate at a time. Like I've talked about, the enemy has an agenda. He wants to get his demonic army through those spiritual gates into the heavenly courts to usurp the throne of God. So, what is Alice's true purpose? It's that linking through technology all the gates together so that they can open or close all the gates at one time. So that's their, big goal and purpose with that. Nobody needs to worry or freak out. Currently, all the gates are closed. The Lord's throne, has actually never been in danger of being lost. So we can, have peace in that and know that there's nothing that can remove God from his throne. He's God. And, we can fully have security in that. So, that's the purpose of CERN. And then the last project, which then deals with, that particular thing of getting the demonic host through the gates of heaven, preparing for that end time war with God, that's called the Voice of God project. So there, kids were made more operational in the use of the spiritual gates and travel through them, in doing things, spiritual warfare in the spirit world. So that's really what Alice is, kind of that technology that connects all those gates together and the different military bases that have control of those gates. So,
wow, it makes so much sense.
It does. I'm actually just sitting, everything you're saying is just kind of settling in, because even though I've heard you speak about that often, somehow when you speak about it again, I hear it differently and it makes more sense. It absolutely does. So it really is. And it's all about, again, sound, singing, music, right?
Vibration.
So
right. Yeah, the vibrations, which, the 5G towers is a part of that as well. Those, the placement of those towers is directly on ley lines. You can see, as you go through a community, you can follow the lines. They're distinctly coordinated, and, specifically with specific buildings too. So make that a, assignment for your kids, and go, stake out your area and figure out which buildings the 5G towers are directly in ley line zone with.
Wow.
What are they wanting with that? It's the movement of energy, you know,
I
so
had no
who moves?
idea that. Sorry,
Oh
carry on.
yeah, high level witches, warlocks, you know. Um, you know, again, it's not, you know, this is something, it's a natural thing. God has created energy. When I was a child, you know, if you look back, think back when you know, just, you know, let's say 35 years ago or so. You know, I remember as a kid, there was static electricity everywhere. Like I could simply just walk into, you know, a school or a place and like my hair would be like all in my face and, you know, sticking everywhere because that static was there. And I was a child that naturally a lot of static would happen with, you know. But now, throughout the years, that static's been hindered. Why have we not, you know, noticed that every time we go to the store, we're getting shocked? It's because there's less static electricity. Why? Because they've been redirecting, reharnessing it. So when you go past those towers, you can actually, if you stop for a moment, you can actually feel
No.
the electrical movement. You know, it's I encourage people because we have to remember that these are connected to spiritual gates, which are part of God's creation. What was that creation meant to do? It's meant to sing his praises, right? So we can actually feel that song. So what I'm saying is not something that's like magic or, you know, encouraging towards magic, but you can just put your hand out and you can feel that vibration, that song. You know, because
Absolutely.
God created it. It's a natural phenomena, and even with it, you can feel heat too.
Yeah.
So, you know, with that, you know, when we don't like when we're just going past it, and because let me think how to put this. We're made to be a part of, there's a unity, a unison that God created between the different things, you know, in his creation work. We're meant to work together all as one. It doesn't mean that we are all one. I'm just saying we're meant to operate as one thing. You know, he created this earth to sustain us, to bear forth life that gives us life and continues. You know, part of that life is different forms of energy through food, through oxygen, through air, through the sunshine, which is light. So, you know, that light, that sound, that vibration is part of God's design to give us life. Um, you know, and so we can get some of that connection, feel some of that. But when it's being harnessed and taken away, you know, from, you know, how did God design it originally to give us life? The sun shines down and we're meant to sit out in the sunshine. Our skin absorbs it. We even receive vitamins by being out in the light, like vitamin D. So when we cut off, you know, that natural form of receiving, there's damage that's done to our physical and our spiritual bodies. So even, you know, all of these 5G towers, because it's redirecting that sound, because it's redirecting the vibration and the light, it causes damage to our bodies. Um,
Absolutely.
so those are things that we need to come back to God's design in. You know, we need to be able to receive as he created us to receive, which part of that receiving, you know, think back to different words like worship. What are ways we worship God? We lift up our hands towards the sun and not worshiping the sun, but we literally lift our hands up in praise and worship to God. And in that, what would happen is that source of that God created to give us some of those minerals, vitamins, then our skin directly is absorbing that light through our hands. The
Yeah.
same with our feet. You know, he commanded that earth to bring forth for us. And as our feet are walking that ground, there's that static energy or electricity that we're picking up, and it comes through our feet. So there's, what's the first way the enemy got to really stop that source of energy supply to our bodies? He created all sorts of designer shoes that we can wear with all forms of different souls that aren't our
Ooh,
soul.
ooh,
But he gave us all sorts of souls that we can put on
ooh.
that then block our energy, our soul from, gathering that energy that God
Connecting. Yeah.
naturally created.
Which is why walking barefoot is so important. I love it. Funny, when I was living in Thailand, it's normal you go places barefoot. So you come back here and it's like I was at a lodge or something walking around barefoot just in the front area. And they told me to put shoes on because I'm now a health hazard. I'm like, are you insane? It's like over there, it's that, over here, it's this. So what is it really?
Well, they do
But
that. Yet all the witches and warlocks during the moons, during certain cycles, they're out there on the beach going barefoot every day, collecting all the energy so they can use it. And then the moment we take our shoes off, they're like, oh, you're a witch. So
exactly.
nobody wants to be called a witch. So we put our shoes back on. And it's like, so they totally capitalize.
And
They're energy
it's complete,
capitalizers.
totally total projection, right? So it's a complete reverse psychology. And guys, we've got to remember this. We've got to realize this. And it's so amazing actually to be talking about this, because the more of this sort of stuff that we do, we naturally just walking barefoot on the little pebbles on the, I mean, if you've walked barefoot on the sea sand, on soft sand, have you felt how stiff your feet are, like your body after exercise? Because you're suddenly moving, stretching tendons
Yeah.
in your feet. And all the meridians are connected to your organs in the body. So just by walking barefoot, you're giving all your internal organs a massage, literally, by enjoying that experience. So it's so important to be able to realize what God has given us and how important it is to use that, in a way that is good for you and for everyone around you. Not
Right.
greedy. There's for
Well, it's
everyone,
meant
right?
that, as we're doing that, I mean, think about, our times, like, how we spend our time, that it's meant to be that we would be outside, walking the land, praying, worshiping, singing praises. And as we do that, the Lord blesses through the health, because it's scientifically proven that those things bring health. The Lord blesses our health. He, um, gives to us, and we're able to receive it. And I always say, we're all really good at like giving, because that's the cycle, is that as we receive, we're to give. Many of us are good at giving, but the problem is we're not receiving. And it's not just that we're not receiving from others, we're not receiving from God. We're afraid to. We don't see
Yes.
people in the majority of our country in America here. We don't see old men walking around barefoot with their hands up in the air, praying, worshiping to God. We really cut all of that stuff off. We make it where we have to, be private in our homes. Nobody sees that relationship with God. And, we're afraid to openly display it. And what does the enemy do now? Oh, he's been hidden for years, had his people hidden, but now we see him brazenly coming out.
Wow.
And are
Yeah.
we going to sit back and be silent? Let him gather, his people gather all the energy and have all the strength and the power when, it's like we have the name of the Lord. And that's the thing, is that we talk about energy and supply. There's a harmony there, but it's not just about going out and being barefoot so you can collect energy and have power. That's not how this works. It has to be
Absolutely.
in conjunction with that relationship with God. And when
Symbiotic.
we're in that right relationship, we have an endless supply of his authority, his power, his strength that overcomes the evil one. And the interesting thing is his word says that we overcome the evil one by the word of our testimony and the blood of the Lamb. You know, we don't need to have great personal strength or, you know, these perfect bodies, you know, but we're called to steward these bodies and these temples because they're holy temples. They're places where God dwells. So, you know, are we going to be found faithful with our stewardship of what God has given us, the beautiful, you know, temples he's given us? What have we done with them? And have we really honored that sacred duty of stewardship, you know, to this gift that God has given us?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Nothing more special than, as you say, it's God lives within us, and it's. I love to say my body's my temple, but it's also my amusement park. I have lots of fun. We go places
you know.
that we don't tell anyone. I love getting up to mischief.
Great.
Yeah. No, you got to save all those shenanigans for when we get together someday, you know. We'll have a grand time and lots of playfulness, you know. That's the fun part of it. That's a characteristic a lot of people have really become staunchy, you know. We need to let our inner children out, and that's not saying that we all have altars. That's not what that comment is about, but we were all created just to have fun and be us, and so many people are afraid to just be themselves and to enjoy life, you know?
Exactly. You know, laughter is God's medicine. I mean, this is where sometimes I sit and I read, I hear things, I just start laughing because it's okay. It's not an expense of someone else, but I mean, my brother was here earlier on telling me the story about his wife's daughter who's brought her 2 dogs on holiday. Now, these dogs are too pedantic to walk to the beach, which is a half a block away. She's got to ride them in the car, but the one dog doesn't do well sitting in the back seat, so the dog has to sit in the front seat, and everybody.
So wait, they put the dog by itself in the front seat and everybody else piled in the back because nobody else can sit up there. That's hilarious.
Because the dog doesn't do well in the back seat. I see my brother's jaws clenching. And he's telling me the story. And he's trying, and I am rolling with laughter. He brought his little 1-year-old grandson to see me. The little Caleb was looking at me. He was like, I was laughing so much. He just could not. And then he was like killing himself laughing at me because I could not stop laughing at the story. And my brother hauls out a photograph. He says, look.
That's hilarious. Well, speaking of dogs, you just reminded me of our topic, which was rabbits. So we need to go back. I've got a great story about dogs and rabbits. We had, as kids, we had bunnies. And one day, I don't even remember exactly how we got them, but I know we had just been driving past, we saw somebody had bunnies for sale, and you know, all of us kids start yelling out to our mom. We're like, yes, we want bunnies. So she stopped, and of course we all got one, right? But then I ended up being the only one who really cared for them. So every night I had to go out, you know, and feed these bunnies in their cages and stuff. And one of my siblings had gotten this one. It was a male white bunny, albino with red eyes. And that sucker was mean. And he had character. He literally would bark and growl like a dog. And he was so vicious towards me. He did not like me, that we had to put him in this very long cage. in fact, it wasn't just me. He didn't like anybody except for, you know, my one sibling. Like, they could hold him once in a while. But anyway, he was in this long cage, and I literally would have to, like, you know, quickly open the door and grab his food out and then close the door. And he would be at that door growling. He'd be like, "Arr, arr, arr," you know, like, I'd be like, oh, good, he didn't get me today, you know. But anyway, though, one day, I mean, we had him for many years, and I'd get so, you know, upset, and he'd be like, oh, I really don't like this rabbit. So one day I had a friend come home with me from high school, and she's like, "Oh, you got buddies." And I'm like, "Yeah," and I'm getting the food and I'm talking, you know. And then I go to turn around and she's opening the cage. I was like, "No, wait, don't." And next thing I know, she's got him in her arms and he absolutely loves her and is all calm. And I'm like, "Do you want a bunny? He's yours." She took him. And
Oh, wow.
the sad thing was she didn't have him long because he really was a terror bunny. And I mean, like I said, he was mean. But the sad thing, I did cry when she told me he died, but her dogs went after him in the cage that she had. And anyway, they ended up having to put their 2 dogs down too. So it was really sad, but nobody made it
Oh,
out of
wow.
that situation with the animals. So that was the sad part, but the good part was at least he had love for a little while that he really enjoyed. But
He met his human.
yeah,
Finally
so
met his human.
going back to that topic with some of the things with the rabbit, there's actually several, you know, nothing in the system is just one layered understanding. So, you know, there's multiple layers. It represents adrenochrome. It looks like, you know, the chemical symbol for adrenochrome looks like a rabbit. So it can represent, you know, that blood, the life that's in the blood. But then what's the deeper meaning to that? Well, that's where we start to see, you know, people like Walt Disney would bring it out in the different videos. It would be brought out in books. Through the story of Alice in Wonderland. And really it represents, the rabbit represents the timekeeper, that, you know, there's different dimensions that operate either on different time or no time at all. So when you go from a place, you know, when you enter into the dimensions, into that spirit world, you know, you have to, if you want to stay in track with time, we'll say you have to be able to keep that time. Why do they need to keep time? You know, it's because they're not going into the spirit world like I do, which is, you know, the biblical way where God shows us visions of the spirit world, but really our physical body and spiritual body are together in one space. You know, there's 2 ways that the classified term that the military uses is remote viewing. So I have one form where, you know, I see everything in the spirit world through vision because God's revealing it to me that way. Others don't get visions, so they try to make ways to be or to access the spirit world. So they found ways to literally separate the spirit from the body, and they call that astral projection. So their spirit leaves their body. Well, when you have that separation, you only have a certain amount of time, because if your body remains without a spirit, it will die. So that's why they use the rabbit representing time, is, you know, because they always build in those timekeepers when they're traveling in the spirit world, so that they know that their soul can return to their body before they die. So that's
Wow.
what it represents. Yeah.
I'm just thinking, just got this realization with the adrenochrome being the white rabbit and Alice being this child that is this gateway from the one world to the other world. So depending on how much rabbit you have or interchrome you have,
Correct. You're absolutely right.
and you can access like other
It
portals.
limits how much time you have to access it. It's an increment.
So Wonderland and the Great Witch is not so wonderful at all.
Right. And that's why, you know, for the hierarchy children, they put us through those initial tests, figuring out how much adrenochrome you need to function on a daily basis at that heightened spiritual acuity versus how much will put you into a psychosis, because you can't, a psychosis is not going to give you controlled access in the spirit world, and you want to be able to control your access there for that point of keeping time. So, you know, that's how they do that.
Wow, that is so in your face. Horrible.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that
think
is-
about, so even, okay, so think about, so this is where it really goes then, is that we're not just talking adrenochrome in the drinking or consuming of blood. We're literally talking blood magic. This is why they also look for young blood, because what happens to the blood as a body ages, it begins to coagulate differently. You know, your cells lose their flexibility and their ability to function. They begin to, you know, become, we'll just say, slow, old, and lumpy. So this is why a lot of the high-level witches will literally infuse themselves with, do transfusions and consume young blood, because then it puts in those red blood cells that are more vibrant and you know, flexible, and then allows them to engage in their blood magic without all the complications, you know, that they'd have to work through if they were just using their own blood. So that's why it's such a precious resource to these high-level witches and warlocks, is because they're using it for high forms of blood magic, which, you know, like usually what we see or hear is the Hollywood form of blood magic, which shows, you know, an individual with, you know, they're putting blood out in front of them that they're going to use, and then they're putting items or articles that are involved in that ritual, and you know, they're performing something magic with that ritual with things that are an outside resource, okay? But at the highest levels, blood magic is all internal. So even what you offer, you are not offering dead sacrifices to Molech, Baal. I mean, you have dead sacrifices that are kind of like the extra money on the side, like the tip, okay? So in every ritual, you're going to give a tip, but what's the real offering? It's, you know, the ultimate mockery of God's word, because they're literally offering their blood as a living sacrifice of service for that blood magic and that entanglement in sex magic in order to get in access to that spirit world for however amount of allotted time. But again, the time's allotted because it's not how God created things to be. So therefore, they have to have the timekeeper with that adrenochrome. You know, so if we could use other words, it's a song. You know, I keep talking about it as a song. You know, there is a song in the blood, and you know, there is that, and that goes along with the time. And you only have, you know, it's literally lines up with a clock. You've got, you know, everything is measured by that time frame, the 12, you know, the 12, and you know, you don't, it's not saying you've got 12 hours or, you know, breaking that down smaller limits, but that's an interesting study, seeing how long is adreno effective in the blood. And, some of their projects and experiments, especially with the military, they push to see what is the longest amount frame they can keep somebody in their adrenos in that acute state and still have them be productive in warfare. So they push those levels to see what happens. What happens then as those people come off of those, longevity adrenal stents. I think that's been one of the longest term running military experiments that has never been brought public, is that use of adrenochrome and seeing how long they can keep people in the spiritual warfare dimension through that. And that's out of Area 51 where they do the majority of those testings,
You
with
mean
the
Mars?
astral projection.
You mean Mars?
Right? Mars, Zion, that's its other name to
I just got
Zion.
another realization. Adrenochrome the blood. So they're taking it obviously to the next level, technology. And you spoke about the 5G and you spoke about the sound, and it all just suddenly comes clear to me.
Yeah.
So if they can infiltrate the sound of God, that frequency, like you spoke about the 5G, like that can infiltrate the sound, then they can change our blood or use our loosh or goosh, or we can be part of this whole, I don't know how to say it, but they're using the 5G to infiltrate the voice of God, the sound that the Creator speaks through our body, through our blood.
Right.
So they're trying to use technology.
Because if we look at this, our bodies are resonance chambers, right?
Right.
So
meant to react to God. Like we're meant to respond to God. That's really what, like let's just take the pineal gland. That's really what the pineal gland is for, is that, it's meant to react, that as we're responding to God, certain hormones are released throughout our body that give that, words that I guess the word we would use would kind of be that euphoria, that deep intimacy, of pleasure and delighting in another. So, that's that purpose of that. But what they do is, I saw the children in those hanging in the military bases, they literally were tapping that gland to take that hormone. And, I've talked about how they add that hormone to adrenochrome. And what does that do? That affects then, they get that feeling, that euphoria without that relationship with God. And, they see themselves as gods. So that's where the enemy twists that, is that we have a false God. It's interesting. Scripture, what does God command? All throughout the Old Testament, he says to Israel, keep my word, keep God before your eyes. Think about that. Keep God before your eyes. But are we supposed to have ourself as God? No. Like literally he's before our eyes. If we take that time, we're releasing those hormones that allow us to see and experience the spirit world where we connect with God himself, who's not just part of our imagination. He's a real living being, and through that we connect to him. But when we block that off, what's one of the ways that they block that off? They have us wear sunglasses, which then keep the sunshine from shining on our pineal gland, keep that light from there, which vitamin D plays a big part of that gland working properly. So they take away that.
Let's think about just on that note, the sunglass industry, right? How much money? I mean, I'm a big one for wearing sunglasses because I just find the light very bright when I go outside. My eyes immediately shrink up. So it's interesting that is, as you say, us wearing. I mean, I know that.
Yeah.
I do know that, and it's very interesting for us to notice.
And the sunscreen industry. I mean, I'm a ginger. I know all about sunburning, but I know that sunscreen is not good for you. You have to have your sunshine. You just need to be more
Yeah.
balanced. But there's one thing about the sound, the sound thing that you were speaking about. God's the Bible says, the beginning there was the sound and was the word of God, and God spoke. So that whole sound thing for me is so amazing. That sound frequency, that beautiful thing that radiate through the universe, and you are created of God's beautiful song. And you mean Jessie, Shanti, you are a song. Jessie,
Yeah.
you are a song. And you're singing with God constantly, vibrating with God. And this is this beautiful gateway that you have with the spirit world. You are Alice in that sense, and Wonderland is you. And that, so they're trying to like infiltrate those frequencies. So they try to do it with black magic, but it's a lot of physical. You can only get to that one stage. And now they're trying to bypass that stage by using technologies to infiltrate that knowledge of vibration and sound. Oh, they're never going to
and
get it.
control.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to put out a technical version of God's voice and claim that that's the voice of God, but really it's the voice of chaos and disharmony. It's not God. Because what happens, like, think about this. I don't know if other people have all had this experience, but, you know, like when you're in a choir singing, or you're at church singing, or maybe even outside, there's that point where you come into perfect harmony. And as you do, you feel that, you know, you feel it resonating throughout your whole body. And you know that you're perfectly attuned with, you know, whether it's the other choir, whether it's, you know, the worship team, or, you know, you're out there singing God's praises to him. But you know, when you come into that perfect alignment and you're perfectly tuned. So they take that away from us. Like, we're all meant to sing together and to be in that perfect tuning all the time. But they play with that and, you know, bring us out of alignment. So what you end up is, you know, instead of that beautiful sound that God created, you know, we get what sounds like these clanging cymbals and disharmony and division. You know, it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't bring us that peace or release that joy. You know, it brings us to that unrest, or, you know, where we don't even want to hear it. We close our ears up because we don't want to hear it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Speaking of that, I have one final question to ask you, just on that 5G sound note. I'm not sure if you've been seeing, there have been some videos doing the rounds lately, but it's showing people, which I'm assuming must have had this, the zapper, and it's like they're looking, suddenly they look behind them and they start spinning around and they die. So that, I mean, I'm not sure that, in fact, I saw it in one of the groups that I'm on as well. Plus I saw video. I mean, someone actually spoke about the experience at an airport, seeing that happen to someone at an airport. So I've seen someone document that in one of the groups I'm on, as well as
there's
I've
been
seen
documents of some animals too with that.
and just walking around in circles. Yeah. But the animals aren't dying. Humans are dying.
Right.
So I'm wondering, is that related to that? Do you know anything? Have you seen anything like that?
Do I believe it's connected? I do. You know, I would propose that, you know, our government and those organizations like CERN, HARP, DARPA have found ways to weaponize energy, sound, light. So I think that that's what we're seeing. The proofs of now is that, in fact, you know, these things are not meant for our good. It's meant so that, you know, those organizations and the people behind it can control. And with that, you know, they do attempt to control life and death, who lives and who dies. So, I do believe it's interconnected.
Yeah, I
And,
wanted to. I believe as well, when you said CERN and HARP, they are manipulating the Earth's energy frequency, and the animals follow that frequency. And back in the days when it was natural, when the tsunami came or something naturally was going to happen, animals do have these behaviors. So it's almost like they're trying to play this mass scale of animals doing these weird things because the apocalypse is coming, or something bad is going to come. And I've seen a lot of people going into this mindset that this is the end of the time. It's all natural, but it's not natural.
No.
Actually, they are manipulating, creating this to take us in the state of, oh, the aliens are coming, or it's another, and they're actually controlling the magnetic field of the Earth for these animals to behave like this.
Do you know what I saw documentation on the other day, which is a little bit freaky, is that they are now planning in 2024 climate change lockdowns. There's one suburb somewhere in the UK that they have already started putting these things in place. So because we bad humans have destroyed the planet so much, now in order for us to save the planet, in 2024, climate control lockdowns have been planned. Now that is when your car can only take 100 trips a month. So if you have 2 cars, only 50, 3 cars, only 30. You get followed with a little camera. You obviously have to have your little Jabster passport.
Your little check-in camera, huh?
Yeah.
Why do they need that? You know what that is? That's a torture device, because the truth is that they've got the technology to monitor us 24/7 from a computer screen. So why the heck do they make us carry around a little camera that we're going to do to document and check in, right? It's really just torture.
Yeah.
They don't need the little camera to keep you accountable.
Honestly, people,
it's just there to make you feel good, I guess. I don't know.
Anyone who falls for that crap in 2024, I'm sorry. No. We cannot be falling for that. Please, let's not do that. Please, whatever we do.
No, we're going to say no if all these harassers and other compliance officers make us all end up going through that. Boy, I'm going to give them a show. We'll make it the Shanti and the Jessie hour. Hello, boys. Here we are today. I'm getting in my car. How am I going to start it? I don't know. Maybe I'll use some electricity.
Ooh, and Elon's good books. Am I on Elon's good books today? Do I get you my Tesla? You see, I need that Tesla. Elon.
Yeah, it just says to me that we're entering that season where I believe, the Lord's really going to start moving through us with signs, miracles, and wonders, that we're going to display before the world. So,
absolutely.
Time for miracles.
Well, well, exactly. And it really is such a beautiful moment of and amazing things happening. So, on that note, Jessie, it's been amazing having you again.
Yes.
So is there anything you would like to end off with to our lovely viewers? In fact, maybe just one question, which is often asked. One of the viewers asked earlier on, if these guys are so evil and they're doing what they're doing, don't they believe they're going to hell or they have any repercussions for their actions? What would be the general thought process around that? I ask you because I've been asked that a few times, so I thought I'd just put it out there.
Yeah. As one of them put it to me once, he said, I already know I'm going to hell. You don't need to remind me.
So I'll just wreak havoc.
It's more of that hopelessness. They give up hope. Go ahead, sorry.
And now they just become crazy and they just do what the hell they like because they know they're going to hell anyway, right?
They feel like there's nothing they can do to change that fact. that's the biggest lie that many of them believe that needs to be shifted, which is why it's so important for us to, reconsider how we approach these people who
Yeah.
are engaged in, the Luciferian Brotherhood, because they've been trained from a very young age to believe that there is nothing, that they have already been so horrible and so bad and engaged in such, bad stuff, that nothing that they do could ever redeem them. So, it's important to show that, what does God's word say? It's so simple. It says, if you confess your sins, he is faithful and just to forgive you and to cleanse you from all unrighteousness. That's God's heart. All we have to do is to say, Lord, I've sinned. I've done what's wrong against you, against others. I've hurt others. Forgive me. And he will. The enemy doesn't want his people to know that it's that simple. So it's all the more important that we share that truth, so that they can come out, because the majority of them do not believe that they can.
Yeah,
And that's
absolutely. Yeah.
why. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's very hard. I mean, if you're doing like crazy stuff like sacrificing a child, it's very hard to believe that that's forgivable.
Right?
But if there's somebody showing you that forgiveness in that moment, it's so forgivable if you just
Yeah.
repent it, you just say it, and God's love is so amazing. And after this discussion today with like how they're trying to use the white rabbit and Alice, they're gonna fail. It's impossible to
Yeah.
recreate God. It's not gonna work. So I feel good today. I feel very good because now I know I can see where they was going, but it's not gonna work. God's love
Right.
will
Well,
prevail.
exactly. It's not going to work. God has already ordained it. I'm going to be a spoiler. He tells us in the book of Revelations what's going to happen. The Lord has said they don't even get a toe of that demonic army. Not a single toe gets into heaven. Why? Because he's going to meet them. Where's his return? It's at the battle at Armageddon. And that's where the Lord's going to show up to meet them for that final battle. And what does it say? It says he destroys them with the breath of his mouth. In one moment, every single one of them is destroyed. And, I just feel the impact of that breath, like, whoa.
Yeah.
And could you imagine that breath as it goes out? Just all these people start falling
Yeah.
over,
And it's
because the
so
sword of the
gentle.
word from the Lord's mouth, that breath is a sword that will just go out,
It's just
and
lovely.
they're just going to fall one after the other. It's already happened in scripture. It happened with Moses and Aaron. Moses was standing in front of the tabernacle, and the Lord's anger was burning so much against Israel that all of a sudden, I mean, I just saw it, because what does it say? It says that by day, the Lord was like a cloud over the tabernacle. All of a sudden, that cloud just gets sucked down, and Moses knows that the next thing, that Spirit of the Lord's going to go out in anger at the people. And in that moment, as all that's happening, Moses turns to Aaron and he says, run, grab the incense, which represents the prayers, right? And the pleadings. So Aaron runs into the temple as the Spirit of God starts to come out. He grabs that incense, and as the Spirit of God is coming out, it says that Aaron was running with it, waving that incense and saying, Lord, please stop, stop. Don't be angry with them. Stop. And it says that I think it was like over 20,000 that day of the tribe of Israel were taken out in a moment. Where Aaron stopped running was where the Spirit of God stopped. But could you imagine being
Wow.
part of that? You're standing in
Wow.
that midst of that multitude of
And
people,
just
and you're watching
and
all these people fall because of the Lord's anger, because they were obstinate. They were outright
then,
refusing and rebellious, not listening to God in his goodness. And
absolutely.
so that's what is going to happen at Armageddon. as the Lord comes, they're going to get the fullness of that wrath, and with one breath, they
Yeah.
all go down. So Satan knows that. He knows that, and he's going to take as many as he can with him with that.
It's like,
Um,
we win,
you
we
know,
win, we win.
we do
And you
win.
know what?
We win.
Even those
Satan
that he
doesn't.
takes with him, I'm sure God has a plan that we don't even know about. For those that, as God, there's a plan, the plan for a plan. I believe God has a plan, even after everything is done.
So much goodness.
I just feel like God has a plan for everything. I just believe
Yeah. Well,
always
eternity together. We'll have to do a show on that. Eternity together. What does that look like?
we could do
Because
a lot
it's
of things.
I mean, this beautiful place, heaven, with, our angelic brethrens that coming together. And to think that God's just going to have us sitting up there in clouds all day is not the truth. That's not, it's a kingdom. Heaven is a kingdom. So it
Yeah.
runs, it operates. Our earth is a replication of that kingdom. So, God's got a lot he does up there, I'm sure. So we're just finding out how our physical earth and our physical positions, and who we are down here is really part of our purpose and our final destination up there,
Amazing. So we are gonna have fun there, Jess. We'll party.
Definitely. Maybe we'll be part of the worship team with the flags. I don't know.
It's like the saying goes. It's like, well, Chantal, didn't you see the red flags? Hell, I thought it was a carnival. I was gonna go play.
Right? I see it. I see visions of that, of all these nations like taking turns and coming up and worshiping before the Lord. And all I can say is the worship is good. I get excited. I have friends that are Native American, also have friends that are African, and they can worship. Let me tell you,
Oh
it's
yeah.
like you got the drums going, the
Oh yeah.
flags,
Oh yeah.
So we'll
The
have a great
spirit
time
is
up there.
It's gonna be great. Oh yeah. Looking forward to that. Yeah, gosh. So again, time has flown by today. What a beautiful conversation we've had with you, Jess. Thank you so much.
Yes.
And unless there's anything else that you'd like to share or say to our
I just
audience,
had
can you?
one last kind of funny, it was just a good thought.
Yeah.
As I was thinking, just thinking back at those visions of people coming before the Lord, but it's true how he really sees us. And so in that moment, Chantel, the Lord allowed me to see him thinking of you. And he was like, putting everybody else aside, was like, nope, wait, stop. Come on. Come on, Chantel. He wants to see that worship. So it was like, nope, my daughter Chantel is coming now. So it's like everybody else gets put on hold so Chantel can come and do her
You
worship.
see, you see, I told
The
you I was
Lord
about
delights in that. He delights in you
to.
coming before him. So that was a good thought. So,
Absolutely.
yes.
Ah, Jess.
I'll go into
That's
prayer. So,
beautiful.
Lord, I just thank you for those beautiful thoughts. I thank you that you delight in each of us coming before you, that literally every day you stop the rest of everything that's going on in your kingdom to take notice of us and to enjoy, to delight in your time with us. So thank you for that revelation, Lord. And I just pray for everybody here that we may know those moments, that we may hear your voice when you say, stop. My daughter's coming, my son is coming, and these moments belong to them. And nothing in this world is going to distract me from spending that time with my child. So thank you when you say that, Lord. And I pray that for everybody listening today, that they would just experience those moments and that our hearts would be filled with joy knowing how deeply you love us, how deeply you delight in us and take pleasure in your time with us. So thank you, Lord, and in your precious name, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
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 All right.
Amen.
Till next time, we'll keep
We'll
dancing,
keep the view
dancing,
going.
dancing,
Yeah,
rejoicing.
absolutely. Wow, Jess, thank you so much. What a beautiful conversation again. Really, really enjoyed it. And again, we've kept you way longer than what we should have, but I don't mind.
I
I
don't
don't
mind
mind.
either. So next week.
There
So
we go. Everyone is happy.
yeah, and I think, do we have a 2-for-1 special next week? Yeah, next week is the 2-for-1 special, I think. So
2
earlier.
for 1
Yeah.
special, brothers and sisters. Join us. Join us. We'll let you know. Well, it's at 2:30 my time, which is what time for
I think
you?
it's 7:30 Eastern is the first one, and then 9 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah. So we'll
And
see you guys next week. It's going to be beautiful. Christmas is coming up, and I know it's a hectic time for lots of survivors out there. We're
Yeah.
praying for you, and we're sending you lots and lots of wonderful thoughts, prayers. Yeah, just I have no words. Just breathe, love, know that we're there. Reach out if you need to.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jess. God bless you all. Take good care of
Blessings.
yourself. We'll see you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.